Welcome to Module 7, Lesson 1, Creating Light with Temperature. Today we're going to be talking about how to use the fourth aspect of color in order to create a strong sense of light or illumination in your painting. Going back again to that famous Hoffman quote, in nature light creates the color, but in the picture the color creates the light. So we want to be sure that we're using as many of those aspects of color as possible in our paintings to create the strongest sense of illumination. So what we're going to be covering today is, first of all, the key to using temperature to create a strong sense of light. We're going to review again the difference between physical color of our objects and our perception of that color, between using local color and optical color. The difference between warm and cool colors in general, and the use of relative warmth and coolness of colors, which is a much more sophisticated way of dealing with the color temperature. And finally, just a reminder again to become sensitive to the relationships of colors. And the way to do that is to compare one color to the next. So you want to look at the color in relationship to what is next to it. Just a quick review that light is a sense of illumination. And again, that we are trying to work from moving away from local color to using optical or perceptual color, which is a much richer way, much more sophisticated way to deal with color. To look at our diagram again that we looked at last time, remember that the key overall to creating that strong sense of light is using a strong contrast in light and dark, bright and dull, and warm and cool. We've covered those first two already, and we looked at light through value and hue in Module 5 in our painting of the building in strong illuminated sunlight, and we learned that using strong contrast in value is going to create a strong sense of light, but also that the way to incorporate hue in there is to use near adjacent hues to lighten and darken our colors. We looked at light through intensity in the last module, in Module 6, and we learned that when you compare and contrast bright colors to dull colors, that you can create a strong sense of illumination, as in our painting of the back road on the right, where the strong light is coming down the road from the bend in the road, and the shadow area is hidden away from the light. So we have much more intense colors where the light is striking. Today we're going to be focusing primarily on temperature, on creating that light through temperature. In our demo for this module, we're going to be working with this photograph of a back road in wintertime. And we're going to create that strong sense of light or illumination through a contrast of warm and cool colors. So you will see in those pine trees in the painting on the right where we have cool colors, relative cool colors in the shadows, and warmer colors in the highlights. I want to talk about the apparent warmth and coolness of a color. Remember that temperature is the apparent warmth or coolness of a color, and that temperature is not just a psychological factor, although it is sometimes defined as being a psychological factor in separating it from hue, value, and intensity. But the coolness or warmth of a color really is dependent on its position on the spectrum as well. So it is indeed a physical property of color. Here you can see a small square of blue adjacent to a small square of orange. And because the blue falls on the cooler side of the color wheel, it is going to be in strong contrast to the orange. So we're going to talk about that difference between warm and cool colors in relationship to the color wheel. We worked on our color wheel back in Module 4, And I want y'all to pull it out again this time as you're going through our different exercises of both mixing paint and painting, because it is a useful visual aid to help you determine what colors to use and to think about the colors that you're choosing to use and their position on that color wheel. You can draw a line down the center of the color wheel and, in very general terms, divide the left-hand side into warm and the right-hand side into cool. That is the standard separation of warm and cool colors. And you can see at the top where the warm red is on the left-hand side and the cool red is on the right, and at the bottom where green is smack dab in the center. That is a very general, very simplistic way to look at warm and cool colors, and it is certainly a great place to start. But I want us to move a little bit deeper into warmth and coolness and to look at relative temperature. So you can very easily look at the color wheel and decide you're going to pick a color from the warm side and a color from the cool side to create light and shadow. But you can also use relative temperature. Think back to our double primary palette where we have a warm and a cool of each color. And that is relative warmth, that one looks warmer in relationship to the other. That's what relative warmth is. It's the comparison, the comparative difference in temperature between two colors. So if we look at just this portion of the color wheel, if we look at yellow, yellow-orange, and orange, we can talk about yellow being slightly cooler in relationship to yellow-orange. We can talk about yellow-orange being slightly warmer than yellow in relationship to each other. So relative warmth and relative coolness has to do with the relationships of two colors that are next to each other. It does not indicate their position on the color wheel. So ultramarine blue is a warm blue in relationship to phthalo blue green shade. So we need to think about the colors being warm or cool in relationship to each other. As soon as you begin to grasp that, and it's going to become more apparent the more you use that in your painting, you'll find that your colors become much deeper, much richer, and much more nuanced. So we've talked about nuances of color several times. This is how you begin to develop that, looking at color in relationship to the next color over in the painting. So in our demo painting for this module, we're going to create that sense of light through temperature, not just through value or intensity. So here's our photograph on the left and the painting on the right. And you can see where we do have indeed some darker values in there. But what is creating the strongest sense of illumination in that painting is the contrast of warm and cool colors. Looking back at an example we used in the last module, let's look at the light falling on the tree, that pine tree in late afternoon. And you can see how warm the light is as it hits the tree. The tree behind it is cool in relationship to the warmth of that light. It doesn't mean necessarily that that slightly dulled purple is really a very cool color. It means in relationship to the reddish orange of the light, it appears cooler. So, final reminders before we get down to painting. Paint what you see, not what you know. Move to observed optical color over local color. Slow down and observe very closely, and you'll begin to see more of those nuances that we've been talking about. Become sensitive to the relationships of colors. Really, really look closely at two colors in your subject and think about Well, is color A warmer or cooler than color B? Is color A lighter or darker, brighter or duller? If you ask yourself those questions before you even start mixing paint, it will become much easier to select those nuanced colors. So again, think about that comparison. We looked at this image in the last module as well, so that the light area, the area that's indicating light, that's more of that orange, the warm orange, is about the same value as the middle value I've got on, middle color I've got on there, which is that in between lighter purple, and it's much lighter than the shadow color, but it's in relationship to each other. So what we've covered today are the differences, again, between physical color and our perception of the color. We're talking about local versus optical. We've gone over the idea of using temperature to create that sense of light and to paint what you see, not what you know. Back up to using color masses and not objects or things, but to think about warm versus cool colors, both in the general sense and in the relative sense. I hope this has helped in understanding and deepening your understanding of temperature and warm and cool color relationships, and look forward to seeing you in the next lesson. Happy painting, everyone.